of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, help us remember the citizens of Boonville that we represent here in these meetings, and help us make the best possible decisions we can for these people and the city of Boonville. Also, it'd be nice to have another couple weeks of Indian summer. Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Roll call.
Young.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Beach.
Here.
Livingston.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Ehlers.
Here.
Heaton.
Here.
Hearing of citizens' comments at this time. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to make some comments, now's the time. Doesn't look like we have too many people here this evening. Moving along, approval of the minutes of the October 7th, 2013 council meeting. Those were in your packet and you've had time to review those. Are there any additions, corrections, or questions regarding those? Hearing none, they will stand as presented. Consent items, we have none this evening. Presentation of accounts and claims. Mary, when you're ready.
Ordinance appropriating money. Be it ordained by the Council of the City of Boonville as follows. Section 1, for the purpose of paying salaries on various accounts against the City of Boonville, which have been allowed by the Council at the regular meeting thereof on October 21st, 2013, the sum of $308,422.79. General Fund, $146,129.22. Sanitation, $19,014.10. CIP tax, $8,694.83. Waterworks, $12,546.85. Capital projects, 0. Wastewater, $31,434.40. Tourism, $10,056.83. Gaming, $80,546.56. Parks water, 0. Section 2, the bookkeeper is hereby authorized and instructed to draw checks on the respective city bank accounts in favor of the persons whose salaries and accounts have been allowed as above, amounting to $308,422.79, being the total amount of money above appropriated. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after its passage. First reading on October 21st, 2013, read for the second time this 21st day of October 2013, since a copy was made available prior to the meeting.
Second reading, title only.
Ordinance appropriating money.
Mayor, I move we approve this ordinance.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Morris? Roll call.
Young.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Beach.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Ehlers.
Yes.
Heaton.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll move along to unfinished business. Item A, second reading of bill number 2013-028, authorizing STP Urban Program Agreement with the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission.
An ordinance of the City of Boonville, Missouri, authorizing execution of a STP Urban Program Agreement by and between the City of Boonville, Missouri and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission, providing an effective date therefor, and repealing all ordinances in conflict with this ordinance.
Mark,
Mayor, I move we approve this ordinance.
do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Morris. Questions or comments? Roll call.
Young.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Beach.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Ehlers.
Yes.
Heaton.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Item B, second reading of bill number 2013-029, establishing Katy Depot parking restrictions on the east side of First Street.
An ordinance of the City of Boonville, Missouri, establishing a Katy Depot parking-only restriction on all the parking spaces on the east side of First Street between Spring and Morgan Streets, providing an effective date thereof and repealing all ordinances in conflict with this ordinance.
Anybody like to make a motion on this? Councilman Livingston?
Mayor, I move we approve this ordinance.
Thank you. Noah?
I'll second.
Any questions or comments on this? Morris?
Is this going to be 24-hour day restricting or just a certain area, time of day?
Mel, you want to take the questions?
There's no time limit on it, it'll be 24 hours.
I'm just wondering if we shouldn't make a time limit on it on kind of, at night, there's no one using the Katy Depot.
Noah?
In our meetings for the street department, we contemplated that thought, and what we decided is from feedback from the Tourism Commission, one of the concerns is that people who park there in the past have left their vehicle there overnight and for long periods of time. So even though they might park there at night, if that person doesn't come out and move their car by 9 a.m. because maybe they sleep in or something, it's going to be in the way for the next morning when there possibly is meetings and such. They've also had instances where somebody's parked their car there and put a for sale sign on it for a long period of time. So I think that's one of the reasons we decided to do the 24 hours. Also, probably the biggest reason is because, again, this is not part of the street. This property, to my understanding, actually belongs to DNR, which we rent from. So we're the tenant, and therefore we have a right to do pretty much whatever we want with that property. So it's not like a regular street where we may be taking away from the citizens a place to park on the street or something.
Morris?
Then based upon that, if it's not a regular street, are we allowed by law to put restrictions on it if it's a private area?
It's our property.
And we're leasing it.
We're leasing it.
Yeah.
Megan, can
Yeah,
we put restriction on?
It's part of the opportunity that we have to work with this property. I'm assuming that we probably okayed this through the DNR. If not, we can do that, but I think that we have the right to restrict parking for the best use of the property.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other comments? Questions before we vote? Roll call.
Young?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Beach?
Yes.
Livingston?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Ayers?
Yes.
Heaton?
Yes.
Thank you. Item C, second reading of Bill Number 2013-030, establishing no-through truck restrictions on Chestnut Street between Main and 2nd Streets.
An ordinance of the City of Boonville, Missouri, establishing a no-through truck, 30,000 pounds, gross vehicle weight rating, GVWR, and greater restriction on Chestnut Street between Main Street and 2nd Street, providing an effective date thereof and repealing all ordinances in conflict with this ordinance.
Mike?
I make a motion that we approve this ordinance.
Okay. Noah?
I'll second.
Thought maybe you guys would like to make the motions on this. Any questions or comments from the public or from the council?
I just say I had another one this weekend.
Oh, really?
So they were able to make it. They did some scraping going down the hill, but he made it down the hill. So
Okay.
the sooner we get the signs up, probably the better.
Now, we had, at Street and Alley, they had asked us to come up with a truck size, and that was difficult to do, and I didn't want to have a truck size that was so small that it would get in the way of pickup trucks or even kind of ramped up pickup trucks, which are oftentimes 18,000-pound GVW. UPS truck, the Swans man, all those trucks aren't necessarily through trucks. If they're going to go to your house, do a delivery, and then move on, that's not a through truck. But I had to pick a truck size that was large enough to be the problem, but not small enough to get in the way of routine business. And that's the reason I decided on a 30,000-pound GVWR vehicle. As a rule of thumb, our single-axle dump trucks are smaller than 30,000 GVWR. They're 26,000-pound GVWR. And this limits trucks based on the gross vehicle weight rating of the truck and not the license on the truck. There are some instances where you can buy a license for a truck smaller than the truck actually is. People sometimes do that so they avoid commercial driver's license rules. So it's going to be a little bit of a judgment call on our troopers to enforce this. And he simply can have the driver open his door, read the data plate on the inside of the driver's door to figure out what the GVWR of the vehicle is if he sees fit. Any of the semis that are the problems are quite easily going to be above 30,000. They're going to be in the 75, 80,000 pound GVWR. Tandem dump trucks are 44,000, 52,000. So all those larger trucks. Garbage trucks, that's not a through vehicle, but the garbage trucks are in the 44, 52,000 pound. Beer trucks, not beer trucks, because I don't know how much you all may have beer truck occasion down there, but soda trucks, they would be in the 26,000 pound GVWR. So if a soda truck's making a delivery to your house, well, it's not a through truck, so it's okay.
Question?
Yes, Mike?
Now that you've clarified that, I understand how it was difficult to do so, and I'm glad you came up with that. I'm not saying it's not a good determination, but I thought you said that dump trucks were less than 30, and then you said garbage trucks are 45.
More than 30, that's correct. Our single axle dump trucks are 26,000 pound GVWR. Garbage trucks, and even some of the garbage trucks that Unlimited Opportunities use, there are tandem axle vehicles, and they are the 44. They're greater than the 30,000.
So
I believe Unlimited Opportunity has a smaller garbage truck.
But they wouldn't be restricted because they're not considered a through truck?
They're not a through truck.
And that clarification is in here on through? I'm just looking for the clarification in our wording on the through truck. I don't see it. Maybe I missed it.
Earl, do you have a comment on
There is
that?
hereby established a no through truck, 30,000 pounds gross vehicle
I see
weighting
it. I
limit.
see it at the top. Okay, no. Okay, so no through truck. Okay, and so that's enough for that to be reinforced. That's enough. I mean, that's enough that our service vehicles servicing the city can do their job, and no changes to how they do their job on Chestnut.
Now, because it's no through truck restriction, that means and I guess it's a cruel coincidence, the truck that got hung up that started this was a moving van. If that was going to someone's house down there to move, that wouldn't be a through truck and would be okay to go down there. Now, that's going to be a case by case, and I don't know how to prevent something like that.
Yeah, and that's, to me, not really our target that we're trying to stop anyway. I mean, obviously, if they're coming to my house to move me, I mean, they're parked out front. I mean, I think that's easy enough for the police to prove. That's why they were there.
That's right, and our officers are good enough. If a moving truck's sitting there for 8 or 12 hours loading out, it won't take one of our troopers but a minute to walk in and say, hey, watch that bank, that street. I think that's reasonable. I mean, I don't want to put an additional responsibility on our policemen, but, I mean, the truck's going to sit there for 8 hours. We have plenty of time to warn the guy that you shouldn't drive down that hill.
Because part of the issue is it's not as much the weight, although I realize you're trying to identify.
Weight is large, and large gets caught, yeah.
Yeah, it's the length of the vehicle that's the biggest issue when you hit that peak. It's the length of the axes, between the axes, of 53 feet or so. They just have a really tough time getting those trailers down. It's not the compact garbage trucks with all the heavy weight up top that are the problem. They can go right over that steep grade, but the longer vehicles just get really close to the peak.
And at the Street and Alley and Sanitation Board, one of the draft of the ordinances was no through truck and trailer combination, but I think the reasoning was a large truck has a better than average chance of having a large trailer to get hung up. So if you're coming down the street in your pickup truck and your bass boat, that's not large enough to get hung up, or even your cattle trailer is not large enough to get hung up. So that's how come it wasn't a no through truck and trailer combination, because you could conceivably have, an 80,000 pound truck, the tractor come down the street. So
ML, where are you going to post those signs? So
Well,
that
that's
the
gonna be-
truck is not going to even get in that situation?
Yeah, that's going to be tricky, because I had thought that the problem was trucks turning off of Ashley Road down Third and then trying to make a left turn. But I understand from Mike and Noah that it's turning off Main Street there by the Steinhaus lot. So we're almost going to have to post it on Main Street. I don't know if it's still there, but there used to be a no block in the intersection. We had a no block the intersection for the bakery trucks to make a wide turn.
It's still there.
It's almost going to have to be there so a driver would see it before. And it was tough. It was tough for me to picture that because I'm not a truck driver, but of all the 90-degree turns to make, that one is just nuts. When you can see straight down you can see left turn lanes and wider intersections at Spring and Morgan, but apparently truck drivers.
I think you have to remember, though, I think most of them use their GPS to position themselves on 2nd Street facing the casino. That's why they come down our street, so they can turn right, and then their rig is facing on 2nd Street facing the casino, and then they get out and they walk down to the boat. I think that's their whole purpose. That's why they get on our street, I think, is GPS. And when they look at a GPS, it's flat. They can't tell there's a hill there.
Yeah.
So they just come down Main Street and say, okay, turn at Chestnut, and then turn right at 2nd, and bam, I'm right there, and I can walk over to the boat.
Yeah, GPS is a nav aid.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to look up and look out the windshield, but we can't legislate for that.
Another
Mike?
question. So, as we look at this particular issue just by itself, I understand we've got a lot of visibility on this issue, but the larger issue of the truckers trying to find a place so that they can go to the casino or to the hotel or to eat or whatever in that area, does that issue tie back into our previous doorstop we put in, I think, with that measure earlier this year, Earl, to allow for certain casino money to be used for improvements? And could it address this issue for them?
I think we've now made it eligible. I don't know that anybody's come up with a good idea on how to implement it.
I mean, well, let me just ask it this way. Why do they go to 2nd Street? Why don't they just go all the way into the casino?
The casino doesn't allow parking on their parking lot.
Okay.
And I think there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, they're concerned about the heavy traffic damage in their asphalt parking lot, and I think there's concerns about room. A guy getting in there with a 53-foot trailer and a tractor, which is looking at a 82 or maybe 84-foot long unit, and getting it turned around in a full parking lot. I mean, you've been in the casino parking lot on a Saturday evening. There's just no room for him to have that vehicle. So it turns out to be an issue with the casino operators not wanting those big vehicles in their parking lot.
But they do provide remote parking
Right.
and shuttle.
Yes, which apparently is either not known or not drawing all the people that need to use that as an option.
And then we
Some
have
of them
further,
use it.
then we have further restricted truck parking on First Street and Morgan Street between First and Second Street to no vehicles greater than 18,000 GVWR. There were two reasons for that. The way I remember is, one, we're concerned about crowding out available parking at the Selwyn building. That argument may be kind of lame now, considering, I guess, but and then blocking traffic. There was too much traffic going to and from the casino to have a monster truck taking up half of the lane of Morgan Street into that west driveway and things. So we have, with that restriction, moved the trucks back another layer or another circle, if you will, away from the casino.
Well, all I'm going to conclude with is that I feel like this isn't the last time we're going to hear of issues relative to trucks in that area. That maybe all we're doing is creating a choke point somewhere else. That they're going to find alternative ways to get over to that area where they like to park on 2nd Street, maybe pulling all the way in and backing all the way back. I don't know how they're going to do it yet, but it's going to create another issue that we have yet to see.
Any other comments? Roll call.
Young,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Beach.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Ayers.
Yes.
Heaton.
Yes.
New business, item A, consider accepting bid for highway de-icing salt. There was a bid memorandum in there. ML, do you want to make any comments on that, or?
Prices are going down, except for the new bidder, and he's new to the service or new to the business, so I think he just hadn't got a feel for it yet.
Okay, any questions for ML? Do I hear a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion that this be accepted.
Okay, do I hear a second? Noah?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Young.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Beach.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Ayers.
Yes.
Heaton.
Yes.
Thank you. Reports of standing committees. Item A, Boonville Housing Authority. Councilman Carter?
It was a standard meeting, good meeting, and got all business taken care of.
Okay. Planning and zoning, Ned?
We did not have a meeting.
Okay. Police board, Councilman Young?
Copy of the board meetings are in here. Chief Bobby is also looking at his budget already, so he's getting ahead of game there.
Okay, any questions for Steve? Okay, park board, Councilman Carter?
Y'all got the minutes in your packet. If there's any questions, we'll try to answer them.
Any questions of anyone? Okay. Reports of standing officials, reports of city officials, city administrator. Earl?
Okay. I think the next item in your packet is the financial statements that we send out every month. This one just happens to be the 6th month. As you can see, the norm is 50%. We've got 13 payrolls, there's 26 in a year, so we're pretty much 50% any way you look at it. So I thought I'd go through here, and then there's a couple of things of note that we need to begin to digest as we go forward into the new year. And so I'll just take a moment and run through here. If we look at the first page one, each one of these represents a fund. Fund is a standalone set of accounts, self-balancing, not necessarily self-funding, but most cases it probably is. The top little section is revenue summary, general fund. You can see we're at 33%. That's a long way below 50%, but the revenues in the general fund tend to be quite seasonal with property taxes, and so basically we haven't got any property tax in there, and some of the other things are weighted toward the second half of the year. In addition to, we make a transfer from gaming that goes in there that we haven't made yet. We don't prorate that out. I just do those once toward the end of the year. So that lags. Overall, we're okay. I do want to draw attention to one particular item that you don't have any detail on here, but I'll give you the description, and that's the sales tax. It's our most important source of revenue in the general fund, and obviously we all had some concern about, given what's happened on the industrial side in our local economy, what might be going on with that. In this case, it's a little bit deceptive because we had I guess we'll call it an extraordinary event occur this year in which we collected some back payments from some people that came in this fiscal year that are in that amount, won't be a recurring number. And they weren't there in previous years either, which is why they had back pay. But if we sort of take them out and make it apples to apples, the sales tax is down 1 or 2%, which is not a good trend, but maybe given the circumstances, it's not too bad. Hopefully, the winter brings it up a little bit, but I don't know that that's a given. Now, we'll be all right because a portion of this entity will flow into a normal payment now that they're on board in addition to the back payment. So that gets us back up over what we budgeted. But if you compare last year with this year and just leave them out of the equation because they didn't vary particularly much up, one, or down, it's down a little bit, and that's not good. So onward with the expenditures, you can see the norm amount ought to be about 50 if you look down through administration, police, fire, street, central garage, all those are well within the numbers. The next one's airport, 99%. Sounds like a lot, but that's solely due to fuel sales. They've had I guess the crop duster was back this year, and we sold a lot of fuel to him, and the cost of sales goes in the budget as an expense, so that drives up that number. And I don't ever necessarily put that in there because the amount of the expense and the amount of the revenue, the sales themselves, tend to balloon your numbers and make everything look out of whack when really the only thing that matters for the budget's the margin. So if you can sell $1 million and your cost is 990, you only made 10 grand. So it doesn't pay to move those numbers around very much. So anyway, that number's all right. The animal control is all right. The Parks and Rec is seasonal. Swimming pool obviously is highly seasonal. The next item, non-operating expenditure, has some, you see it's a relatively small number, 12,000. We've had some annexation expenses and some other type of things that we didn't really have a budget for that I've stuck in there at this point, but those aren't recurring amounts and won't make a material difference in this year's ending picture when we get there. Cemetery is also a seasonal item, as you recognize. It's almost probably 90% mowing out there. The municipal court is within range. The COP debt service looks like it's ahead, but a portion of that has to do with the refunding we did back in the spring. We did the paperwork and so far on that, and the ordinances in March, which is before the end of the fiscal year, but the actual close wasn't until April 15th. And if you recall, we paid down the principal slightly with some of our own money. And so that piece of that money that we paid for principal is in there. So that skews that number, in this case, about 10%. We're probably a little bit over because the federal government is not gave us the 100% of the reimbursement off the Build America bonds that they promised because of the sequester. And that, I think, continues next year, albeit at a slightly less amount. So that's the general fund. Again, we're going to be fine operationally this year, but the challenge always is to find operating revenues that come in and try to get some growth out of them to keep track of the expense side, which is going to have health insurance and loggers. We've got that number in. It goes up nominally 1%, but since everything's rates under, that's going to be a budget impact of over 10% for that line item, and there's not one revenue that will grow 10%, nothing close to that. Next page is solid waste. We're doing pretty decent this year. You see the revenue, we're at 49. We're down a little bit on the transfer station revenues, although that's not a huge part of this, but it is a significant part of it. Most of it's the billing amount. We've helped ourselves with implementing the fuel surcharge. That's covered up that part of it, so that helps us in there. And you can see the collection side is doing all right also. So it's relatively stable through the winter. The revenues from the transportation will go down some more then, but I think we're generally probably going to be okay, probably as good as we've been in a number of years. Not that we're going to end up with that amount plus. But next item is capital sales tax. This one again is skewed heavily because about the only source here is the sales tax. So you can see it's driven it up to 70% versus 50%. Again, that's the back pay on the 0.5% in addition to the 1% that I spoke to earlier. The expenditures down at the bottom, the 74 is just basically the one-time payment we make to Moberly that's made earlier in the fiscal year. Next page, waterworks. You see the revenue there is shown at 46. This is again primarily user charges. And we do make a transfer in there from gaming to the water fund to pay for its share of the COP debt service, which covered the water tower construction. And so that's about 200,000. So if you prorated that in, which would now be about 100, we'd probably be about 51%. So we're doing all right in there. I still have some concern with the water sales. Obviously, this has been a wet year. It started off kind of wet and cool. Nothing like last year, of course, and we tried to take that into account when we did the budget. We backed that off probably $40,000 over last year because of the huge sales that we generated last year. So obviously from here through the end of March, the water sales are going to decrease. So I still have a bit of concern that that's going to fall off some. It's not going to imperil us this year, but each year you start anew. So I'm generally satisfied given the weather where we're at there, and hopefully it doesn't fall too far. As far as the bottom part, again, their debt service is also impacted a little bit by the refunding item there on the one at 61%, because they paid a portion of the principal down. Next item, capital improvements fund. This is solely on the grants. The reimbursement on grants is notoriously slow. We've had a little bit of design on the airport taxiway project. We've had some design on the two enhancement projects that we have on the bridge in Spring Street, and maybe, I guess, the STP project, because we bid that now. So we've had some of that, and we've got some reimbursements, but there's probably one or two that have come in since the date of this, but they're always behind, because and not all of them are 90%, but anyway, but we're okay in that respect. I would point out that the taxi lane project is under design now. I think they finished the preliminary design. The construction on it is significant. It approaches $1 million. So even at 5 to 10% share, which is as good as you get in the grant world these days, our share is still significant, upwards of $100,000 on the construction, and the fund does not have the capacity to do that, so we'll have to give it some money as we go through the end of the year and into next year. The construction won't start till next year. So, wastewater fund. Again, you see it's 49.5. The user charge is just about in the same boat. This one has less seasonality than does the water, because we have the sewer averaging, so it doesn't kick way up in the summer when people are watering and so forth. There is a bit of it with businesses, commercial accounts do rise for whatever reasons in the summer. So we have some risk of that tailing off a little bit, and maybe we end up at 48 3/4 or something. I don't know, but you can see the numbers down at the bottom are in fine shape there also. On to tourism tax, we kind of started out a bit slow this year, but the last couple of months have been strong. You can see the 18 is a very good number for any one particular month. And we're up to 52.68, and I think there's a little transfer in there that they've basically overcome, because it hasn't been made either. So it'll slow down a bit as we go into January and February receipts, but I think it's on target, and they're doing all right on the expenditure side also. Gaming tax, you see 47.93. You can see we're lagging there. The expenditure side, again, some of the projects been slow to gel. Some of the projects we've just sort of had money there that we didn't, sort of the stuff we said we were going to move towards Science Hall, so we haven't spent any of that. And the transfers, which are significant to come out here, haven't been made. So that number is, the 18 is not an accurate reflection of that, but it's still in satisfactory shape on the expenditure side. On the revenue side, I do want to comment on that a little bit more, and I'll probably hold off on that a minute. The next page there is the new sales tax we passed, the park and stormwater sales. You can see we've collected about $198,000 on that. That's almost all sales tax. They might have just a modicum of interest income by now, and we haven't spent anything. So that's starting to build up a little bit. So let's. The last page there, I tried to, I guess, impart a little visual message on the gaming. I think since I've been here, I've always said gaming's stable, in spite of the economy and so forth, it's stable. Well, I can't really say that anymore. It's down. We're probably down 5% in round numbers. If I had to make the budget today, I would reduce what we had budgeted last year by $200,000. And as we go through the end of the year, although I have some hopes that the comparisons get a little easier through the winter, and thus maybe it doesn't quite continue that trend because the early last year was also weak. But if it does, we'd probably be at 250. And that's a significant number to try to digest. It doesn't seem like it ought to be, but it is. And so you can see it's both on the gaming tax side and the admission side. I did speak to Mr. Conley down there, and we talked about a lot of things. You know, there was a lot of snow and bad weather early last year, but that's outside of the comparison I'm giving you here. April, their numbers are fairly real time. There's not a big lag like there is in some other things. We get those within a couple of weeks of the end of the month, whenever they cut off. They had some construction that was going on, obviously, down there, and then they had a couple of electrical items that messed them up, like they were down a better part of the 4th of July, which was probably cost $10,000 to us for that day. But in spite of all that, it's his opinion that something's happened in the regional gaming environment to where people aren't spending as much money as they were. He said they've noticed it in their other sites that are in Missouri and Iowa and so forth, and some of his peers in the industry have confirmed that they're experiencing it too. So they don't have much of an explanation for it other than the resumption of the 2% thing with the Social Security that happened last January 1st, but not all that confident that explains much or all of it. So basically something's happened, and something's finally caught up with spending and a little bit. So I think we have to factor that in our orientation as we move forward. I don't have any thoughts that it's going to continue to spiral down 5% every year, but once is enough. So I just wanted to basically keep in mind we have to be very cautious on the sales tax, and then the gaming tax is already giving signals that you can't ignore anymore. Yes. Ed.
On the gaming comparison, the gaming drop itself looks to be somewhere in the 0.5% range, but the admissions drop looks to be over 10%. And I probably don't understand enough to be able to tell you or to tell myself why that difference exists, but if gaming represents the income from the gambling, and admission simply represents the number of people, could I conclude that the drop that we're seeing is mostly in the number of people?
I think that's fair. The weight of it is, I think, yeah. Admissions measure two things. One, the number of people going in the door and the length of the stay. Because remember, theoretically, if you're there, and nobody can quite understand how they count this, but there is a method, I'm assured. You remember when the boats first started, there was a 2-hour cruise, and you're supposed to get off and get back on. Well, now if somebody stays there over 2 hours, that counts a second time. So if there's fewer people going in, which I think is the predominant amount, and they're staying less time as a secondary consideration. So
When you discuss that with the people at the aisle, do they think that there's anything from a community standpoint, or could they suggest anything from a community standpoint that we could
I didn't ask for
increase?
suggestions, but I didn't get the impression that he thought it had anything to do with the community.
Okay.
I think it's more of I think they point to something more macro.
Okay. Thank you. I have one other,
Yes.
just a quick thing. During the Parks and Rec meeting the other evening, there was a decision to recommend doing the complete study, the whole comprehensive, is that the right word, Gary? Do the comprehensive study or plan for the parks to include the sports complex, which they discussed. But they had some questions with regard to funding. And when we look at the tourism tax and we look at the the sales tax for park and stormwater, it looks as if on the tourism side, we've got a $16,000 surplus. And of course, we haven't spent any of the park and stormwater sales. If we were to expect that study, say, to cost $25,000 or $30,000, is that where we would target to get that money, Earl, out of the park stormwater sales tax revenue, or out of the surplus in tourism?
I think I don't think I'd be inclined to try to take it from tourism, because that's a revenue exceeding expenditures at this point in time, but
Right.
sometimes they're a little back-end loaded on the expenditure, so that might not be true at the end of the year.
Okay.
The park thing, I think it's eligible there. I might try to just personally entertain a couple other options that might fit to do that if we want to do it. I don't know what the magnitude is, but.
And I don't know that the $25,000 to $30,000 is accurate either, so, I mean, we've got a ways to go.
Yeah, to define it, and I guess my real thought is, given this little picture we're talking about here, which doesn't necessarily say how long that's going to continue, and the number of things we all recognize that are already on a plate, when you do a master plan, almost the inevitable result is that there's a whole bunch of new ideas come forward that somebody thinks is good, and we ought to try this and that, and we get people's hopes up and so forth, and I don't want to overpromise, given what's realistic over the next number of years. So.
Well said.
Is the bills for the pool in?
Oh, they're largely in, but there's an electric bill.
I didn't know if the
goes yearly.
92% was final. We were
It's
below
not,
budget.
no, actually, we'll probably be over.
A little bit over,
time we're
okay.
done.
All right.
Yeah, because we didn't have a good year there either.
Sure.
So.
Kemper,
Okay.
you got more?
Got more, okay.
Yeah.
All right, next item. Kemper Buildings. I think you all have a little report there that I had put together, and as I said in my memo, when we were doing the first rendition with Marcia, one of the first things we were going to do is try to look at the buildings and see what the needs were, what the prospects were, and immediate maintenance versus realism down the road. And when that didn't gel, I kind of went ahead and did it myself. Again, this is very cursory, just a couple of days walkthrough is about all this is. They did avail themselves to the guy from TH&H who has some more specific capabilities on the structural side, but I think I guess the report generally speaks for itself. If we just start with, Academic Hall, I think we all thought that was probably the best conditioned building we have there, and I think that's largely upheld. K Barracks, I guess that's the residence hall in the back. They actually, that turned out a little better than I thought that it might, because we haven't done much of anything to it, but it's still doing fine. And I think it also has some possibilities, given its method of construction, where you can do some changes to it without compromising the structural integrity, because it's whatever you call it, the concrete stuff instead of the A Barracks. Has some issues, but seem to be fixable. And likewise with D Barracks, although D Barracks has the roof issue that we've been trying to address this year, and still haven't quite got there, but it's coming up. None of these are, of course, without their financial challenges of doing that. Basically, that then leaves the administration building, and you can read his comments on that as well as anything. He was not optimistic on the present condition nor the prospects of bringing it back to useful life within any sort of realistic numbers. And I guess that it is what it is. It's been, we found some other information, I think it's probably been added on to maybe up to a dozen times over the years, and I think that contributes to a weakness here, a weakness there, and overall, it's tough to find a place to go. Now, I did ask him whether it was possible to save part of the building, and I believe somewhere in there he said of the southeast portion, in other words, of the part along 3rd Street on the south end, is the best piece, and I guess that's, in some degrees, the original part, although it's been modified since the original time, too. So that's a possibility. I don't have any costs on it, and I'm sure he's not willing to stake his reputation on that at this point in time either without doing some further work, but that could be done. There's also a lot of environmental analysis that needs to be done in the building, no matter what its prognosis is going forward, because that won't be, no matter what the ultimate disposition, that's going to be a significant item to deal with. I'm talking about probably 6 figures easily to deal with some of that stuff, let alone the demolition of some or all of it. So I think this is another piece of our pie along with our financial stuff. I think worked with Marcia since our last meeting. She's going to make her first visit out in November. $750 a trip as a side note, so can't go too far wrong with some expenses. We'll reimburse her for expenses, but can't go too far wrong with that. And I think it's important to get her on here because she's probably the best one to articulate a vision and the possibilities of really getting there. I mean, she's always had that vision to do that, and I think we need to hear that, because sometimes you look at it and you see you got over 200,000 square feet down there. How the hell you start doing that when one building costs $3 million and it's in pretty good shape to start with? So we'll work through that, and of course there are a number of other things on our plate too. So, any questions? No.
I guess my concern is not letting this die. I think we're in our 10th year now. We purchased it in 03, and very little happened. A lot's happened in the last few years, so I think we've got a lot of momentum going. So I guess my question would be and concern is that this is a great report. It gives us a lot of information, but where do we go from here? Because I hate to just put this on my shelf, and 1 year from now, we're no further along than we are today.
Well, I guess you can give some direction on the administration building. You can weigh in on continuing to spend money on repair, and it's we're talking about $50,000 to repair a D-barrack roof, and that's not even doing the whole roof. That's it's not, some of that stuff's not easy to cover anymore. So some of the rest of them, A barracks, I think is beginning to get to the point where it needs some stuff. K is not too bad. D, well, that's the one with the roof. So academic hall is probably minor at this point in time. So I guess you just need to affirm you want to keep going that direction, and we keep working in that direction, trying to cobble together a little here and a little there to get it done. And we got bids on D barracks this year, and I don't know, it was $90,000 or something. They didn't want to do what we asked them to do, so we rejected that and went to a different contractor to see if he would be more amenable to our method, and Dennis Paul was involved in that, and I think they will. But so
$50,000, probably your guess estimate on the roof, on D-Berry's?
That's part of the roof on
Part of
it.
the roof.
Yeah, the part we think is the worst, because
The
we
good
did
thing
a
is
piece
it
of.
should last for our lifetime, right?
No, I don't know. This is not putting brand-new roofs on it.
It's not?
This is
Just
kind of like a
patchwork?
good patch job.
Good
yeah.
patch job?
Yeah.
Well, some of us aren't going to live as long as others, so it might be in our lifetime.
Well, yeah, maybe
Okay.
yours.
I guess that's just my concern. I don't know what the rest of the council's feeling is, but I just hate to see 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, we've just been putting maintenance in these buildings and we're not getting any further. Now, with that said, we know from experience we waited, or didn't wait. We were actively looking for something, and it took eight years to finally find something
Yeah.
really good, and we latched on to it. But I just like to make sure that this just doesn't get shelved away and we get concentrated on other things and have to come back to it in 5 years and we're worse off than we are today.
Okay, I got some comments on that as well. I hear your points, I agree. I think if we need to give you direction, first of all, we probably have to have a couple of options available to help define where we want to go, where we're willing to spend, like, what's available, first of all. We got a tighter budget this year in certain areas. I don't know that we're going to have a lot for roofs, but my opinion is that if you're going to save the buildings, if that's for a period of time until something evolves or continues to evolve, and perhaps the educational arena or other aspects we haven't considered yet, then you obviously have to do what you're doing. You have to keep the roofs on them in good repair, and you have to get the water off of them and shed it away from the buildings, otherwise to keep the foundation in repair. So you have to shed the water, you have to get the water off the roof. Now, the idea of spending money every year to patch it every year, that's to some degree eventually going to go down the drain. Maybe it's 3 years, maybe 5 years for a patch job versus a replacement job. It's going to last you 20 to 50. So I realize that you're investing in the building for a lot longer period of time, putting on a new roof and a lot more money, but you may end up spending that same amount of money over 10 years of patching or 15 years of patching. Eventually, you are going to spend money that you're going to have to all throw away, because to put a roof on, you're going to have to spend that same amount plus more. So, you're going to have that kind of information available if we really want to save a building. I think we also ought to give you a priority on the buildings that we want to have saved. If money is available more 1 year to the other, which buildings are our priorities? As far as what I saw at the admin building, and I'm not providing any expert analysis, just a general view of one day that we went through there. My feeling is that we should be willing to let that go. However, I do agree, and I'm glad to hear that they see that it's potentially possible to save the southeast corner, which is the original building, as I understand, that was on the grounds. So from a historical standpoint, I think that roughly, without any measurement here, roughly 1/8 of the building, if that could be salvaged, then I'd like to hear that option. The roof, again, I'm talking about the roof. And everything else, we could perhaps separate somehow in the future and maybe even demolish it and get it out of the way so it's not pulling down the part we want to save and not causing us any extra maintenance other than currently I think we're just putting boards on it. But I think we need to prioritize where we want to do the transit repairs on it until we get the money to do something more, like with the science building. We're hoping to do so. And so that if we get funding, we know what our priorities are that year. Is that building taken care of? That's our first priority. What do we have left? Let's take care of that second priority, third priority. And maybe we're going to have to separate ourselves from more than just the admin building in the long run because we don't have the funds for it. I don't know what that other building that may go to, but so as I gave you all that information, how can we get what we need to give you the guidance you need so you can get a plan to go forward?
Can I answer that?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, go, feel free.
Well, Marcia Drennan, Dr. Drennan, has come up with a timeline, and she's going to begin her strategic planning quite soon. And it's not a lengthy process. It's maybe 5 months. So I believe,
I think she's planning on having a report late January.
yeah. So that coincides with our budget planning. So we can sort of see what she has to say, what her strategic plan looks like. We can look at the buildings and kind of see which ones, in the strategic plan looks like it might be used or the most highest priority to save. So I think we need to have just a little bit of patience, get a little bit more information before we start prioritizing what we're going to do. This is very preliminary, and I think we need to get a lot more information before we start making decisions. But it's a good. You're absolutely right. We are going to have to make some tough decisions. But let's let Dr. Drennan get on board, do her planning, do her investigations, and work with our staff members to get a little more information for you guys to make a good decision.
Yeah.
Ned, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying, except for one thing. I think we have to prepare ourselves on the administration building. And if I'm Dr. Drennan, that's kind of that's one of the questions I'm going to ask. What is this demolition going to entail, and what it's going to cost? I don't think anybody in the room, is going to be thrilled by taking that building down. But those of us that have been through it recently would say that there are portions of that building that we just can't abide. The other thing is, and you can speak to this too if you want to, Megan, but we now have knowledge as a council. For those of you that haven't gone through a lot of litigation, usually a defense attorney, the first time when we got sued, the first question that he or she would ask me is, did you know? Did you know this was going to happen before it happened? Kind of makes your defense pretty poor if you knew and you didn't take some action. And in this case, I don't think we need to take any overt action, but at least having gone out and gotten some information and some bids on the demolition, gone out and gotten some information with regard to the administration about, if we save this corner, what does that add to the costs, so that we can give that to Dr. Drennan. Personally, I don't know what our E&O covers, but if we were to have an accident on that administration building, we have knowledge. We know that it's a dangerous building now because of this report. And if we haven't taken any action, I don't know what whether we're covered as a council, whether we're covered individually. I don't know enough about that, Julie, except from my background and my, what's happened to me in the past.
I don't know if you've driven by the campus lately, but Gary, your guys have
Sure
boarded
have.
up all of the windows.
That's the
and
first thing I did.
secured it.
It's security.
And Earl and I talked about that. And I'm very, very glad that Earl and Gary took that action to take care of that. To close up those access points, particularly that backside basement access. For any of us that have been in that basement in the last 10 years, 10 years ago, it was scary. So I think that's a step. Good question, Noah. What's the next step? If this were my business, probably the next step I would take is I would go out and get information and see if I couldn't get some estimates with regard to demolition and trying to save the corner. So that it's here, it's available, and it's available to Dr. Drennan. I don't know that you need a motion or anything on that. I think that Earl can take that action as he needs. But
I think she would need some technical assistance to evaluate some of the stuff. So.
But I'd like to see us take that action.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Is that it?
That's all.
Okay. Mayor's report, I do have a couple of things. First of all, the annexation and the bed tax vote is coming up real quickly. So I hope you're all out talking to your constituents about the importance of getting out and vote. This is one where people need to physically get out and vote. We need the numbers on this. So please encourage people to get out and vote. Of course, the city cannot spend any taxpayer dollars on it, so all you can do is talk and give them the information. But a lot of times, that's all it takes. It's just having an informed public. Secondly, I have secured a nominee for the Ward 2 vacancy. We are currently putting together a biography and some credentials, and those will be sent out to you before the next council meeting. So, City Councilor.
Yes, I do have something this evening. The Casey's store has purchased a third site here in Boonville, has taken over the Jump Start corner out there at the corner of Main and I-70. They are in the process of finalizing their final site plan, and in conducting their evaluation of the site plan, they have found a small sliver of land that was not properly annexed into the city, similar to a few of our other little areas around town. So they are going to have to do a little voluntary annexation, and I've been working with their attorney up in Ankeny, Iowa, and they have submitted their voluntary petition to Mary today, and so we will go through that process, and there's a timeline, as you all well know. So we've got a couple things that we need to be prepared to do over the next couple months. We expect to have their final site plan reviewed by Planning and Zoning at the November 12th Planning and Zoning Commission. They are requesting a few variances. They're requesting a sign variance and a rear setback variance that will require a Board of Adjustment review. We will anticipate having a first reading at City Council if those plans go forward and are approved on November 18th. We will need to publish a hearing and set that for a public hearing at our second reading on December 2nd to meet the timeframes of the voluntary annexation statutes. So this evening, I think I'd like to go ahead and request setting the public hearing pending first reading and so forth going well for the December 2nd meeting so that we can get that on our timeline and make sure we get proper notice out to the community.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further questions or comments? Roll call.
Young,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Beach,
Yes,
Livingston,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Ayers,
Yes.
Heaton.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all
Anything
I
else?
have.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. City Clerk, Mary, do you have anything?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Miscellaneous.
Mayor, I got a couple of things.
Yes, Morris.
First, there was a press release done on the lodging tax. And I'd just like for the public to know that the recommendation that the tourism made on how the money would be spent is strictly a recommendation, just like any other committee makes to the council. That before any of the funds can be spent in any way, it would have to come before the council for their approval.
Okay.
So this recommendation they got in here that's all it is a recommendation.
Okay. It would be subject to council approval.
Yes.
Okay.
Then second thing is, I'd like at our next meeting to put our gaming tax funding on the agenda
Okay.
so we can discuss exactly some changes that some of us would like to see done and maybe benefit the city and save them some money.
Okay. That's the distribution of the gaming revenue?
Yes,
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
that's all.
Okay. Any other miscellaneous? Ned?
yeah, and I have 4 items. And Mary, I typed it this time instead of handwriting so that you could read it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay?
Okay.
First item has to do with the Moberly Area Economic Development Corporation meeting on October 15th with the Boonville City Council, IDA members, and Cooper County Commissioners all present. It was held at the Isle of Capri. All 3 invited groups had a voting majority present, and the meeting was decided to be an open public meeting. Indeed, the city put a small ad in the BDN, Boonville Daily News, by the way. I formally request that the City Council's attorney, Megan, investigate fully the conducting of this meeting. The notices presented, the availability of public seating, the agenda, and other factors that occurred or did not occur to determine whether or not we were in violation of the sunshine laws by attending that meeting. I did not find a posted agenda. There may have been one, but I did not find one. There was no public seating available. The room arrangement was such that the public would have had been to the side and had to have stood up, and it would have been very uncomfortable. There was no public comment section announced during the meeting or allowed. The public there were some public that did attend. There were it looked to me like a half a dozen people down at the end of the hall by the time I got there. But they did not come into the room due to the layout and, of course, due to the dinner. And it did not appear as if anybody was taking a transcript or taking any minutes, which, of course, would be required to be done and need to be provided. There may have been, Megan, there may have been some other breaches of protocol about which I do not know. But I ask that we, the City Council, receive a report and opinion from you, hopefully by the November 5th meeting, so that at least we can have counsel if there was a sunshine law violation. And as a personal comment, I think it's always important to get in front of these issues. If there is something that we did wrong, we'd be a heck of a lot better off if we approached the authorities admitting that we did something wrong, as opposed to waiting for somebody to, come after us. So that's the purpose that I'm bringing it up tonight, and I'm requesting that you do this. Item 2 has to do, should the Boonville City Council support any City of Boonville extension of the Moberly Area Economic Development Corporation contract. In my opinion, the overriding factor is what happened on their watch. My dad was a colonel in the Army, and that was one of his favorite sayings, happened on your watch. During their presentation and in their introduction documents, they claimed to have added 600 jobs in their territories. Mr. McAfee detailed the gain of over 200 jobs in Monroe City during the last 3 years, which is true. During Moberly Area Economic Development Corporation's watch, Indico moved away from Boonville and into Monroe City, which added some 150 some jobs to Monroe City. Additionally, another manufacturing employer in Monroe City did gain a large contract through their own sales efforts, which allowed them to increase their employment of workers by some 50 to 75 jobs. These gains happened on Moberly Area Economic Development Corporation's watch. They can claim these gains. And since they want to claim these gains, then perhaps we should also count the losses to Boonville of 5 employers of more than 50 people during their watch. Nordine, Fuqua, Indico, Hostess, and Dave's Country Market employed a total of over 1,500 people at their peak. So while Moberly Area Economic Development Corporation wants us to be aware of their gains in Adair County and Monroe County on their watch, let us not forget the losses that occurred on their watch in Boonville and in Cooper County. Were this a private business on the stock exchange, what would happen to the CEO with that kind of performance that Moberly gave us? Were this a real estate firm, and many of us are familiar with real estate, trying to sell property for us, and they did all this busy work, but did not sell our property for 3 years, would we not change firms or approach? Despite all of the busy work that they espouse in trying to justify us keeping them, there have been no concrete positive job results to make us even think we should retain them. I mentioned this to Steve. I personally endorsed this concept back in late 2010 when we were looking at it. I personally stood up and said, I think this is a good idea. and I was president of the IDA at that time. And I'm sorry to say today that I was wrong. Boonville has suffered great loss while we were under contract to Moberly Area Economic Development Corporation, and I believe it's time to say stop. Item 3. Today was a fun day, a great, fantastic day. I got to spend some time with Paula Shannon and Dick Blank and Earl and see a contribution made to the Katy Bridge. For the first phase of the Katy Bridge renovation, the City of Boonville received a sizable grant, which required a cash match, that's easy to say, of approximately $130,000. When the City Council agreed to move forward with the Katy Bridge renovation, it was clearly agreed that the coalition would operate and raise the necessary funds to accomplish the renovation and its resulting use as a tourist attraction. To date, we have not received any accounting of funds that have been raised and the coalition's progress toward these goals. Since the City of Boonville is the guarantor, we actually own the bridge, and we guarantee the performance of the coalition. I think it would be a good request on our part, starting with perhaps the November 4 meeting, that the Boonville City Council agenda, on that agenda, we receive an update from the coalition on their financial successes and require them to do so quarterly until the bridge is completely renovated and tourists are visiting and using the bridge operated by the coalition. And I'm not talking about anything complicated or lengthy. Just needs to be, this is how much we've got, this is how much we've raised, and this is where we're going from here. But I find myself without knowledge, so to speak. Item number 4, and Earl, thank you for the financial reports. I want to talk about our financing, I want to talk about Kemper, I want to talk about spending, and I want to talk about jobs. These are all part of number 4. In 3 years, we have seen declines in sales tax revenues and gaming revenues, despite increased expenses. In those same 3 years, the city will have paid out, spent $3.5 million on a swimming pool, a fire station, a city hall, and a council chamber. Then we spent another $750,000 to renovate the library learning center in the campus, Kemper campus. Now we are slated, hopefully when we get a signed lease from State Fair Community College, to spend another $1.7 to $1.9 million against an EDA grant of $1.3 million to renovate the science hall on Kemper campus. And then also pay, it looks like, for the partial demolition or total demolition of the administration building and at least stabilizing repairs to the other Kemper buildings. So we've spent $6.25 million before the administration building and before any needed repairs to all of the other Kemper buildings. All to gain how many full-time jobs? 3, 4, 5? I voted for 2 of these, and I'd vote for them again. I voted for the Library Learning Center, and I voted for the Science Hall. I don't doubt for a second that those were smart things to do, and that they're going to bring us a lot more strength in the future. But we've done this all while our revenues are declining. Our in-house magician has worked miracles. Thank you, Earl. And he also saw it coming and provided us with the top 25 at budget time last winter. Now it's time for us as a council to get real. We have 2 huge positive job-driving engines, tourism and our opportunity as a bedroom community. as well as our other blessed businesses that have stayed and continue to succeed, to whom we need to be issuing kudos and thank yous every day. It is time for us to set up the plan of improving our economy and the concurrent employment opportunities for our citizens. And I ask you, Mayor Thatcher, to appoint a small committee to include myself, Morris Carter, Wilbert Meyer, and his choice of a person from the IDA, Eddie Brickner, and Earl, to create a plan for our economic, short, and long-term future. And for us to start now, laying the personnel and asset plans to achieve what we are capable of achieving in the Boonville economy. I suggest this plan be presented to the City Council on the second December City Council meeting as part of a workshop agenda. And that's why I kept the group small, is because we're going to be reacting quickly to our current and current needs. Thank you.
Okay. Could I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
You were talking about the meeting. I wanted to clarify with Moberly area. They did not make a request to extend our contract at any time. Is that correct?
You know, I didn't hear it, no.
Did anyone else hear that?
Didn't hear it,
Okay,
no.
so I don't want the public to think that we were asked to extend the contract, that was the basis of that.
There wasn't
But
any
you don't
assumption.
even know if that was said?
I didn't hear it.
It was not. They did not ask us to extend the contract. Were you aware that there were public standing in the hall?
There were, yes.
Why did you not tell Corey that there were some people who would like to listen? Did you do that?
I had two regrets. And that's
Two regrets?
That's a great question. I had two regrets. Number one was that I didn't press the issue.
Yeah.
And number two, I didn't leave.
You know, it's
Yes,
easy
I did.
after this
It is.
to say, oh, they did this wrong, and I'm not sure what the end result is that you're wanting to have done here, but I want the public to understand that that was an information-only meeting,
Yep. No, your point is well taken, Julie.
okay? Megan, do you need any clarification on what he is asking for you to do?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Your point on the Katy Bridge, I was in contact with Paula Shannon yesterday. There have been a lot of things going on in that group with the death of Pam Davis. Paula has been out of town pretty extensively, so they're very, very hard to get hold of. So we are trying. And I think it would be very nice to have there's nothing I'd love more than a quarterly report, believe me.
Good.
So we'll try to get that.
Thank you.
Let's see. As far as the financial reports, you talk about our economic development, and we're going to be looking at our economic development as far as Moberly area or whatever else we might be looking at. I think we would be wise to wait until we make that decision rather than front-load it with some decisions until we get our decision made on our economic developer. And then have that person help us work on this, personally. But if you all think Ned and Morris need to go ahead and start making decisions on this, but I feel like it would be foolish to do that before we make decisions on the economic development.
When is the contract up?
December.
December
This
31st.
December? Okay.
So we
We'll
would be,
be making
he wants this group to have something final in the second meeting in December. So then that's right before we would be making a decision on economic development. I don't think that's a wise idea. Noah?
My only clarification about what you're saying is, one of the concerns I have is when it comes time for me to decide what's best for us, as far as my vote's concerned, I'd like to know what the alternative is. I mean, obviously, we could re-sign with Moberly 3 years and 1 year. I mean, I know all those kind of options. Those are obvious. But what are we putting that up against? My opinion is if there's nothing in the alternative by the time December 31st rolls around, I really have a problem voting not continuing a relationship with them cold turkey when we have nothing in place or not even an idea or a concept. So I wanted to clarify what you're saying about.
I understand, and you're all about a half step ahead of what we're going to be discussing quite shortly. So you just need to have a little bit of patience.
Okay.
Morris?
Just want to clarify one thing. There was some public invited into that meeting that night. But when they seen how the room was set up and there was no place for them to sit, they made the decision to go home.
Okay.
But they
didn't ask for chairs to be set up.
Well,
I
but
just
they
wanna-
did.
Okay, I
No,
didn't
they-
realize there were people outside.
Yes, I mean, there was some and they was invited in.
Uh-huh.
And actually, to be honest with you, their comment was, why do we want to go in and sit there and watch y'all eat?
Okay,
So we're going on home.
okay.
I just think there should have been some chairs already set up for the public to sit in.
Okay.
And just a quick clarification as regards the committee. The committee would recommend to the council. The committee couldn't decide. They don't have that ability. The council is the one that ends up deciding on whatever is brought to them.
I still think you're getting the cart before the horse here.
I'm trying to put the cart and the horse at the same
If you
time,
would just
actually.
be patient and maybe a couple of weeks, Ned.
2 weeks won't hurt.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Other comments? Yeah.
Okay.
Not about this,
Noah?
but other stuff.
That's fine.
Kind of goes along with some of the things. Well, let's get my thought process here after we unwind all that. What Morris had suggested about the gaming fund issue. I know we've got a lot going on, but I think in my memory that's something that we've asked for several times this year. And I know that from past experience, the longer we wait to tackle that issue, the harder it gets as we get to deadlines. So I know we got a lot going on between now and the end of the year, but I again would ask exactly what Morris was, that we get that put on the table. I don't know if it takes a workshop or an hour discussion, whatever it is, let's get it on the table and get it out of the way, because I know we got a lot coming up.
I don't think it'll take a workshop. I think we could just do it in a meeting.
Okay.
Anything else? I would like to compliment Jim Yonke. Is it Yonke? Is that how you pronounce your last name? This report is just awesome that you guys provide us with. It's very helpful. We've never seen information like this before, so I appreciate it very much, and it's very interesting, and most of it's over the top of my head, but as long as you understand what's going on, that's fine, so, but it's very good. Okay, any other miscellaneous?
I've got one thing.
Oh, Tim.
You probably have heard on the radio or in the paper, they're going to have an emergency exercise on Friday, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware. We're going to be down behind Fuqua. They're going to close traffic from coming out of the rear of Pilot and being able to come up that way, which there shouldn't be any reason for. And they'll probably block it off up at Radio Hill Road, which there shouldn't bother anybody's traffic, but we'll be down there all afternoon on Friday conducting a hazardous materials exercise.
So the south side of Fuqua, that road that goes back to there, will all be blocked off?
Yeah, I think that's actually called Fuqua Drive that comes in behind Pilot. And so the rear exit of Pilot, they won't be able to come around towards Fuqua. They'll still be able to come out and go back around towards Comfort Inn in that direction. So we were originally going to do it in front of LSC on a Friday afternoon, and the more we thought about it, maybe not the best, so we'll be out there all day Friday.
I suppose, too, I think I heard on the radio that they're going to do the staging at the high school parking lot, so if people drive by and see a bunch of fire trucks and ambulances, it's nothing
Right.
at the high school, it's your staging area.
Right, we're going to,
There is no school Friday.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
no
good.
school.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.